Welcome to another episode of Behind the Business presented by Gore Mutual. I'm your host, Ian McLean, President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. This podcast is recorded on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Each week I sit down for candid conversations where we go beyond the boardroom and behind the business to uncover the real stories of Waterloo Region's business community. Today's guest is Jim Estill, entrepreneur, innovator, community builder, and the CEO of Danby Appliances. Jim has a long track record of turning bold ideas into thriving businesses, but his story isn't just about business success, it's about impact. He sponsored over 90 refugee families in Guelph, created an entrepreneurial culture at Danby, and lives by the belief that leaders have a responsibility to their communities and to the planet. In our conversation, Jim speaks about his journey as a serial entrepreneur, the lessons learned along the way, his unconventional but effective monk mode experiences, and what he sees as the future of business innovation in Canada. Join me in this episode as we go behind the business with Jim Estill of Danby Appliances. Well, we're excited to have you here today, Jim. I want to thank you for joining us in our new podcast studio. You're our first guest in this space, so thank you for joining us and coming down to be and share your story with our listeners.
Well, thanks for having me. And
listen, we've known each other for a lot of years, and I've followed your career, and it covers the gambit of a lot of things. One of the references that others make of you is you've been called an unstoppable entrepreneur, and so let's rewind a little bit from where you are today, but let's rewind to the $2 billion company you started as a student at the University of Waterloo. Share the story of that business and what initially sparked your interest in entrepreneurship, because not everyone's suited for it. Some people are. You are obviously one of them. Tell that story.
So I was in university, fourth year systems design, and I wanted to design circuit boards, and I needed a computer. And back in that era, computers were very expensive. Mm-hmm. But I found I could get a better deal if I bought two of them. So I bought two, and I sold one, and then someone else wanted one. So I bought one, and then someone wanted a printer. Someone wanted a disk drive. We needed to upgrade the memory. And so pretty soon I'm buying and selling computer hardware, software, peripherals. And that's the business that grew ultimately. Partly I was in the right place at the right time because computers were just in their infancy. This was before everyone had a computer. Matter of fact, the question would be, well, do you have a computer? Oh, well, okay, then I won't talk to you. Now, like, how many computers do you have? Like, it's kind of like, well, you have a television. You don't need another television. Yes, you do. My interest in entrepreneurism actually started younger than that. I was a camp counselor, but the camp I worked at was only open for a month, and so I needed a job for the other month, and no one would hire anyone for a month.
Right.
And my dad had me painting a fence, and one of the neighbors said, "Oh, could you paint something for me?" And then I painted that. Then I went and started Jim's painting. So when I was in high school, I had this taste of having my own business, riding around on my bicycle, quoting jobs. I hired my brothers. I hired my friends. So I had a College Pro painter business before College Pro
was a thing.
It was a thing, and that was just the taste of entrepreneurship that I could do it on my own.
Wow. In the company that you built, because I'm interested. People start a business. I mean, there's lots of things that go into that. In every time, it eventually grew to being a large company. When you first got started, how did you finance it? Like, that's one of the things people start a business. Say, where's the capital to even get started, to get your two computers, and then you obviously if you're selling those things, you need inventory. There's a variety of things. Talk a little bit about some of those things to get started, because a lot of our members would be new businesses starting their own, a second career or a vocation that they're really interested in. There must have been some things in there that you had to, some of those hurdles that you had to navigate.
So I did what many entrepreneurs do today and went out and approached people and tried to raise money and say, Ian, will you invest in my business? And the answer from everybody was no. You have no experience. You're a kid. We don't trust you. We don't think you'll be successful. So, but that actually helped me because it created a frugality and, okay, I'm not going to be able to buy this trade show booth. I'm going to make the trade show booth. I'm going to take the kitchen table and put a drop cloth over it and whatnot. So I didn't have money, which limited my growth in the early days, but that wasn't bad because I wasn't, it gave me time to learn how to run a business. So I did $450,000 the first year, then $1,079,000, then $2.6 million, then $4.6 million, then $5.6 million, then $10 million, then $21 million. So I just grew, where if I jumped straight into doing $50 million, I probably didn't know how to run it, and I would have not known how to manage people or whatnot. As far as cash goes, I learned how to collect money from people before they got their product. And as they got delivery, I learned how to pay people later.
Yeah.
And so largely it was...
so managing your cash flow, right? Money in and then stretching out your payables. And
exactly. And at being in the computer business and inventory, because I had to go lean on inventory, that turned out to be a genius thing because technology, if I said, oh, I've got this... computer, and by the way, it's been in inventory for 3 years, you're going to say, well, that's not worth anything. And so turning your inventory fast, I figure in the technology business, inventory can devalue like 4% per month. Like it's huge devaluation. So it served me well that I actually couldn't have built a huge warehouse and filled it with inventory.
The Behind the Business podcast is made possible through the support of our title sponsor, Gore Mutual. Proudly Canadian, Gore Mutual has stayed true to one purpose for more than 185 years, insurance that does good. It's the reason they exist. They believe that when we focus on being good, doing good, and spreading good, we all thrive together. We're grateful for their continued commitment to our local communities and the positive impact they make every day. For more information, visit goremutual.ca. So let's switch a little bit. You have mentored and invested in many companies along the way. So from that was your seminal kind of learning stage. But I mean, when you're now running Danby and doing very successful there. But when I first heard your name, it was in the tech space. You were a tech guy. You've mentored and invested in many companies, including you're a founding board member of BlackBerry. I remember those early days. I had every BlackBerry from the time it was a pager all the way through, but I remember those early days. Based on your experience, what are some of the common traits or approaches do you see in leaders and companies that succeed in and innovate in such a fast-paced, tech-driven environment here in Waterloo region? Because that was one of the things. Things were once the tech, U of W, and all of those the BlackBerry era started. There were a ton of companies. Things were changing really fast. It really got to warp speed. What are some of those common traits and approaches in that fast-paced environment?
Well, it's strange combinations of persistence and knowing when to let go and knowing when to change direction. So the pivot is a fundamental. I mean, I even pivoted in my business. My first business, I wanted to design circuit boards. That was what I wanted to do. But I pivoted to buying and selling computer products because that's what became profitable, and that is what became the big business. So I notice one success characteristic is the pivot, the ability or the willingness to let go, but at the same time, the persistence and the speed and the sense of urgency. Sense of urgency absolutely wins.
Yeah, it's fascinating in this community that we've been through a bunch of different traditional businesses like farming and insurance and sort of manufacturing, and then we've gotten into high finance, if you will, and technology, and there are some of those common traits that go through to be successful in business. So appreciate that. Listen, 2017, and this is the pivot point when for some who will know you more for Danby than they would for your tech career. but you joined Danby as the CEO. And I think it was probably seen as those were the days when manufacturing was on a lower ebb. Everything was, whether it was in car manufacturing or assembly and auto parts, there was a lot of disruption in those days. And Danby or at least manufacturing in North America was probably seen as being an established brand, but sort of past its prime. How did you breathe new life into Danby as a 70-year-old company in an environment where manufacturing was a tough place to be in North America? So there was a lot of things that were being manufactured or assembled in other parts of the world, Asia amongst them.
And at that time, and even now, Danby has a lot of products assembled.
Yeah.
In
Yep.
Asia and Mexico and Bangladesh and Malaysia and wherever. So partly what I tried to do is to impart the sense of urgency and the speed in a smokestack business. So just take the technology, speed, and so when I got into it, the inventory example was an example. You go in and they say, "Oh yeah, we've got 9 months of inventory." What do you mean you have 9 months of inventory? We need to turn this every 30 days, don't we, or else it's going to be obsolete. They "Oh, no, it's not obsolete. Your air conditioner is the same last year as it was the year before, as it was the year before." And then I always look at niches. What are the areas that we can do well in?
Mm-hmm.
Part of the key in business is actually to pick the right size business opportunity for the right person. So you're going to have an entrepreneur listening to this that says, "Oh, AI is going to be big." Great. You're going to be the next AI. And you're going to be Google and Microsoft and whatever. Well, really, is that it? But maybe you can be AI for dentists doing
Right.
implants.
The specialty.
In the upper mouth. I'm just So what we do at Danby is we have a few niches, and it's multiple niches that we go after. I always look for competitive advantage. I always look for utilization. How can we utilize our what we have better? Danby has a reasonably large air conditioner, window and portable air conditioner business, and so that, of course, is summer weighted. That's why we bought Arctic Snowplow, which is winter weighted.
Winter related, yeah.
And so that means that when one company doesn't need the resource, the others can use the resource. But business is a matter of tiny tweaks as opposed to a major, ripping things out or changing, in my experience.
You talked about turnover of product and how much you have so that you can be responsive to your customer when they need it, but you're not sitting on too much because extra product is just money sitting on the shelf and it's not being put to good use. As in your experience with Danby, just-in-time delivery is a thing, certainly in the auto space of getting parts that you need for assembly in different plants. Is that part of the model that every manufacturer has to have now? Is that dance or that choreography of getting what you need to do your part of the business to get the finished product? I mean, or is that unique to larger businesses?
So everything was heading to just in time. Then COVID happened.
Right.
And what happened in COVID is all of a sudden you couldn't get the parts.
Right.
And all of a sudden the supply chain was broken. Then all of a sudden said, I wish I had 60 days of parts sitting here because then I'd be able to ship something. So the supply chain changed from just in time. The other thing as far as niche goes, and Danby, one of the niches that we decided was we wanted to have some inventory because what happens is large companies like Home Depot, they will order containers from China, but then all of a sudden they find out, oh, we're out of freezers. Well, in COVID, they're out of freezers. Hey, well, we've got them sitting in our warehouse. So the local, having local warehouses in North America with product, right. It became a little bit of a niche. That said, you've got to watch your working capital, got to watch your storage costs money.
So is there actually, I mean, that's an interesting question because COVID did, it really exposed cracks, whether it's in the social side of our communities, whether it was in business of some of the things that were needed to be rebalanced. Is there a new, and you just touched on it, is there a new sort of post-COVID equilibrium there about saying it's not just in time, but it's also not having, huge amounts of inventory. Is there a new balance that businesses have had to strike?
I think that there is definitely a new balance relative to having inventory, but the other part is it's more subtle than that. It's okay, what are the critical parts that you're not going to be able to get? What are the few parts? We got good at substitute selling. So you want a 10 cubic foot fridge. Oh, great. Well, that means you could take a 9 cubic foot because we've got those in stock. As a matter of fact, the current tariff in the United States is creating an opportunity to move any slow moving inventory because maybe the black freezers didn't sell well. Well, you want a freezer. Well, you can buy a black freezer and it doesn't have the higher tariff on it. But things definitely changed, and I think businesses realized they needed also multiple source. So pre-COVID, in many cases, you sort of solidify your buying clout and say, I'll take 1 million of these or 5 million of these pieces and give me the lowest price for 5 million. Now it's kind of, okay, we'll take, you can have 4 million, but I'm going to buy 1 million from somebody else just because.
You got to have.
Just in case.
Yeah. And we talked about this at our Innovation Core event the other day. Supply chains are. I think there is this notion, and we've heard from government, we can't be as reliant on the U.S. And not the trade and tariffs thing has upset the entire global because there's tariffs on everyone and how it intersects with the U.S. is still the world's largest economy. Is there an opportunity in Canada? I think we saw this in COVID. Coming back to COVID, it's like, well, we didn't have masks, we didn't have rubber gloves, we didn't have a lot of the things that we needed on the medical side because all of that was sourced from Asia or other places. We found out that Canadian industry, in a matter of weeks, pivoted and started, like Eclipse Automation started making masks, and there was lots of people that the innovative entrepreneurial spirit struck, and everyone said, we got to deal with this. Is there an opportunity for there to be more homegrown Canadian supply chain that serves businesses like Danby?
So in COVID, actually, Danby did a micro pivot, and we made 10,000 ventilators. I don't know whether you're.
Oh yes, I do remember that. I think we talked about that on the radio show or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So we made 10,000 ventilators, which was a pivot because ventilators not that dissimilar to making a wine cooler. It's smaller and whatnot. But I was worried I was going to lay off all my staff, and I was worried I was going to not be in business because that's what everyone thought at that time. But is there more opportunity? There is more opportunity for Canadian made, but what people have to understand is volume is still tough to break.
Yeah.
So if you were to take an example of freezers, 10 times as many freezers are bought in the States as they are in Canada. And the molds and tools and dies to make a freezer might be a couple $1 million. So if you take that and divide it amongst, 100,000 pieces, well, that's $20 more per freezer. You do it to 10,000 pieces, it's $200 more. So there is this issue with economy of scale, which is tough to do. At the same time, there's high psychology in the public to buy Canadian.
Yeah.
And so there's an advantage there. And the other thing on that, it's a variation of buy Canadian. Like if you're buying a screwdriver, you better to buy it from Canadian Tire, which is Canadian retail, even though it's made in China.
Yeah.
Or buy it from Home Depot, even made in China. But and the fact is, every product you buy, even if it's made in Canada, undoubtedly has input. Where'd the screws come from? Where'd the parts come from? So made in Canada is never 100% made in Canada.
Yeah, fair point. I think there's almost part of that. If I look at it, even in the grocery stores, you go, I'll buy blueberries because I want blueberries, but I'm not buying American blueberries. I'll buy, if I can find Canadian, that's the number one, but I'll buy them from Mexico or I'll buy them from wherever else I see on the store shelves. I think there's some of that. It's just Canadians are angry about what the U.S. has done. It was interesting to hear the American side of why that was. But anyway, that's a separate conversation for another time, because we will have you back. And I love these conversations with you. Look, Um, I was thinking, what's the boldest decision you've ever made that really changed the trajectory of your journey? Like, was it leaving sort of tech and going to Danby, or what's the boldest thing you've done either in business or in your career?
Well, the boldest decision was when I started my business in university.
Yeah.
Because even though I started ever so, gee, you're successful, the first couple of years, you're making no money.
Yeah.
I could have got a job at Tim Hortons and made more money. That's how, so that was the boldest, but it was a great time to start because I had no overhead. Like I wasn't used to a nice, I don't in the car or anything. It's like, I've got a car. Well, that means I need to get someone to boost me to start it. Isn't that how you start a car?
Yeah. Okay. We often hear about success stories, and I think there's every small business owner, every entrepreneur knows that creativity and the innovation comes with that comes a fair number of either mistakes or learning lessons, if you want to put the positive spin on that. And I think this is one thing. I've been in elected office before. We work a lot with government and on policy. And there's this fear in government of saying we got to go slow because we can't make mistakes. Business makes mistakes, and business owners, corporations, they make mistakes all the time, but they learn from them. What role have those failures or the missteps played in your career in terms of how you adapt when you make a mistake or you make the wrong decision and have to pivot?
So I believe in having a culture of failure, meaning you don't zap people for failing. And one of my expressions is fail often, fail fast, fail cheap. Mm-hmm. So, but the key is you need to do all three. So the companies that fail, don't forget to fail cheap. So I undoubtedly, we're introducing products next month. One of them is going to fail. But it's fail often, fail fast, fail cheap. So how can we make it so it's a cheap failure? Well, we'll sell the thing at cost. We'll sell it at 10%. We'll sell through the failures. The other thing I say to people and entrepreneurs is having a failure does not make you a failure. And people remember the good stuff. They don't like you talked about BlackBerry. So Jim's a genius. He did BlackBerry. I did 150 companies. Mm-hmm. 25 of them exited. So there was, Well.ca and MyoVision and ClearPath and, a bunch of successful ones. But 100 of them went bankrupt. Yeah. And so, no, you're not saying that, hey, Jim, you invest in this company that went bankrupt. Yeah, I did. So it's fail often, fail fast, fail cheap. And I always find that you don't put enough in the winners. That you invest in, and I put too much in the losers. But partly as an entrepreneur, you need to move forward, shake it off, and not dwell on any failures.
Get stuck on it, yeah.
And the same thing can happen actually on successes. So sometimes you'll see an Olympic athlete, and they're living their life because they got a gold in the Olympics 28 years ago. And is that, you can't totally live on past glory either.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Recently, and I found this interesting getting ready for this, you spent 3 weeks in the woods for what you refer to as in monk mode. You completely disconnected from technology and electricity, living completely off the grid, which is harder than one might imagine, I suspect. What did you gain from that experience, and how does it shape your business thinking? And I'm not sure if you do this often, but you certainly did it recently. How did that affect your business thinking when you came back from being totally off the grid?
So I try to do it every year.
You do it every year? Wow.
Yeah, so I do it repeatedly. There's a few things. I am a digital addict. So you weren't here when I got here, and well, that's okay. I'll just check and see an email or text, and so I'm a digital addict. I will go work on a computer at home or at the office, and then drive home and check my email and then my news and my stock prices and whatnot. So I'm digital addict. I go to a place where there is no internet service. Right. So even if I want to, I can't check my phone. so being disconnected, it slows me down. It gives me an appreciation for the little things, like making making tea is one example I use. Like, to make tea, you have to go take the water out of the lake. You have to put it through a filter because it's not clean to drink. You have to go find some wood, cut it up,
Set
make
a
a fire. Right. And half an hour later, maybe you'll have tea, 45 minutes later. So everything's slow, everything's physical. So I like the physical. From a business point of view, I have a journal and I come back with a lot of ideas.
So it's
But
thinking time and
yeah, but I at the same time I have to be careful. I don't want to come back and then to tell you have the team, here's my 81 ideas that all need to be done on Monday. It's very healthy for my team because it means my business has to be able to run without me. Mm-hmm. And I believe in business, that's strong businesses can't be me making all the decisions and waiting for me to make that. So people in the company, they rise up, they start making decisions, start doing things. So when I come back, I actually have a little bit more time because they found out, oh, they could deal with this. So that's healthy, but it's just healthy for me. Like my optimism goes up, and it's healthy.
Well, and I probably fall into the same category. I'm always checking emails and what's next. I think one of the things that probably would do some good for folks out there that are listening is if you're disconnected, you're also not seeing all the negative. So I think you can come back and say, oh, here's some new ideas and come up with, as you say, that optimism. Because when you do stay connected electronically, email, social media, news, there's not much of it that's particularly positive. So it does sap that sort of excitement for what could be when you're seeing the reality of the day.
That's right. I am a news junkie for sure. It's actually one of the things I like about this type of show is it's more focused on the positive than sitting, because people actually click on the negative because they want to hear about the mass shooting and the earthquake and the disasters. They don't want to hear as much, and everything's an echo chamber, right? So once you click on once, you get it from one news source, then another, then another.
Well, we'll have to have you on Business to Business because that's what we try and do on that show on a weekly basis, is try and tell some more positive stories about successes in business and how it's helping the community, because there's not enough of that in media as a whole. Listen, one of the things that I've followed your career, I've admired your career, but one of the things I do admire is your belief in doing the right thing as a person, but also as a company, and for the community and for the world, and of course, I've been involved with the immigration partnership of Waterloo region around getting newcomers, getting them settled, and a sense of belonging and finding work for the 15 years I've been at the chamber, because it's important. It's the talent force of our future collectively in this part of the world, and so. You've been an advocate for sustainability, but also you're a humanitarian. You sponsored, and I think this was incredible. You supported you have supported over 100 refugee families, and I don't know, was it Syrian? Did it start with the Syrian refugees?
So you started with Syrian, but now I keep doing Afghans.
Yeah.
And then when the Ukrainian thing happened, they're not technically refugees, but we did a lot of Ukrainian.
Yeah. So how did you bring that sense of responsibility and purpose into the way you lead your teams? Because, and your company culture of building, because you've brought in and made the accommodations, and there are some accommodations to bring in people from other parts of the world that are part of your Danby workforce now, and personally, but also within Danby.
Well, the original "Do the Right Thing" I was not thinking "do the right thing" in the world. It was more that was just our company manual.
Yeah.
So how do you treat your coworker? How do you treat your customer? Do you ship a substandard product? It's like "do the right thing." That's a simple screen to put everything through. As far as integrating people into a workplace, and for what it's worth, most of the refugees don't work for me. So I've just helped bring people in and place them in something that's more appropriate for them. We can't hire all of them, but we already were very multicultural. We already were the United Nations. We already have that. And the one thing is success in refugees. There's 4 pillars. One is people working, speaking English, some degree of integration, and giving back. So that's the 4 pillars. The speaking English is maybe a little bit of a focus because you have no future if you can't speak English and whatnot. Tough love of working. And I find often people who are trying to make a new life work very, very hard for their families. We're basically, you're looking to have good Canadians. That's what I say. We bring in good Canadians, right?
Yeah, and it's been a real success story, and something that for those that are working with newcomers to Canada, it's a real it's a story that people like to tell because it's from the heart. You started from it personally, but it has become a business I would say success for Danby as a leader, but it's helped your company. We've been fortunate to have local businesses with thought leaders, and there's lots of them in Waterloo region who make a difference in not only locally but provincially and across the country. In your experience, what's the most effective way business leaders should work with the communities and government and other organizations like not-for-profits to make a meaningful impact? Because we all have a role to play. I mean, one of the things that we've, our chamber, the Cambridge Chamber, Waterloo Economic Development Corporation, Explore Waterloo, and Communitech have collaborated together as Best Waterloo, the business economic support team of Waterloo region, which started during COVID, but we've kept that going now because we see this community is growing. Will be 1 million people in Waterloo region within 20 years. There's lots to do, lots of housings needed, LRT, new hospital, 100,000 new jobs that need to be created. That's not happening just with business. It's not just happening with government. It's not happening with civil society and not-for-profits. It takes everybody. How do you kind of see the role that you can play and that business leaders can play in that complex dance?
So one thing I say is do your piece, whatever your piece is. Mm-hmm. So I happen to be doing my piece around refugees. I've got a furniture bank which recycles furniture. We take your mother's estate and we redistribute it for free to those in need, that type of thing. That's our piece. But you can support the food bank. You can support cancer research. You can support the hospital. And we do support hospital, hospice, and whatnot. But and so I never fault anybody for doing any of that. As far as politics go, I don't do politics, but I'm opinionated, so I often share my opinion as to what they could do. But I always try to look for the greater good. So I'm not saying, okay, we should pass legislation that everyone has to have 3 refrigerators in their house. That's not. I'm not just saying you must buy Danby. Actually, that's a good one we should put forward. But so I try not to look at just my good. And as a business person, I always try to find ideas that are not that don't cost much or anything. So around housing, I'm a big believer in accessory apartments. Yeah, I'm not going to live in an accessory apartment. I'm not going to put one in my basement. But the fact is, that's one of the best sources of housing because most of the struggling middle class needs the income of and the infrastructure is already there. You're not going to dig up the roads and put more sewers in. All houses can do it. And you're already heating the house. It's best for the environment. You're not building on green space. That's one simple example that I've been an advocate of. Let's encourage accessory housing if we can. And so I do kind of lobby around that. Another one that doesn't cost the government anything is speed doesn't cost anything. So speed around permitting, like it costs the developer interest to have a property waiting to be built, and if it takes another 3 or 4 months, they've just added 3 or 4% to the cost of that house to no benefit of anybody.
Yeah, I think that speed always, or lack of speed in government decisions always for most business people, they just don't get it because you can't work at that speed in in business, or you just wouldn't be in business. And I always describe, having been on the other side too, as government is not designed for speed, bureaucracy, but somewhere in between what business would like to see and how fast things are going now, there has to be a better middle. To your point, we're not getting things done like, and all of this has to happen at the same time. And it's exactly like, you're located in Guelph. Guelph has a version of the same issues that Waterloo Region has. Toronto has four times the size or five times the size issues that we have, and it all has to happen at the same time. More doctors, new hospital, finishing our LRT or transit in your community, 70,000 homes, creating 100,000 jobs, all at the same time. Like that is not something that can happen slow. The decisions are kind of built on one another, and I agree with you. Speed is, we got to find a way to speed it up, if not to the speed of business, certainly faster, and that's a very good point. If you were mentoring, so as we kind of wind up, and then we'll get into our rapid fire questions towards the end. If you were mentoring, and which you do anyways, but in mentoring the next generation of entrepreneurs, what's the one piece of advice that you'd give them to navigate in such an uncertain or chaotic world right now? I'm not sure it isn't always, to some degree, like it's always uncertain, and there's always I do think that there's this moment in this last 5 or 6 years has been particularly uncertain. So what's the advice you'd give to the next generation?
Well, when my father was alive, he always said, these are the worst of times, always. and so that's what we feel. We feel they're the worst of times. We feel they're the most uncertain. The advice is just do it. Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid of failure. I mean, Ian, you're not going to be sitting there saying, Jim, you started this thing and it didn't work. You're not going to care. So be flexible, but just do it. I see many entrepreneurs getting into analysis paralysis. So if you want to be perfect and want to know all the data, entrepreneurship is about making decisions with imperfect and incomplete data. That's what you have to do. You have to make the decisions, and you have to get comfortable with that.
And maybe, in admitting, and I think you said earlier, like fail fast, fail cheap. You learn from all of those experiences too. I mean, that's part of the failure, saying, hey, geez, that business, I didn't have the right business focus, or I didn't do it the right way. But you learn from that, and I think that's what I hear you saying is, in the failure comes the learning and comes the next opportunity.
That's true, and true wisdom is learning from other people's mistakes. We're not very good at that, but we even tend to not be good at learning from our own mistakes.
So, and I know this kind of ties in. For that next generation, what's the importance of having a mentor? Like you had, maybe it was your parents, or when you got started, you must have had some people that kind of, not everyone, but some people would have encouraged you or given you advice when you asked. I think it's incredibly important for young people to try and seek out someone who, can be a mentor to them, give them the straight goods, give them some unvarnished truths that they may not see themselves. What was the importance of that for you? And because you do it now for others, why is that so important?
So for starters, I did not have a mentor. I had multiple mentors.
Right.
And I would have multiple mentors around multiple things. So one of my mentors was Frank Hasenfratz, Linamar Machines.
Yep.
And he, of course, ran a big business. So I'd ask him big business questions and stuff like that. But I had so many mentors, and they didn't know they were my mentors either.
No.
So the other advice is buy a lot of coffee or lunches.
Go and have a chat.
And just go out there. When I was growing my business, I deliberately would say, okay, I'm doing 10 million in sales. How do I do 20? I'd study the people that do 20. When I'm doing 20, study the people who do 50, study the people who do 100, study the people who do $1 billion. So always look to the next level. Mm-hmm. And what I learned is it tends to not be what I would need to do to get to the next level. It would need to be, what do I stop doing to get to the next level? Because, when you're doing 10 million in sales, maybe you're taking all the orders, making all the sales calls, doing all the work. And maybe when you're doing 100 million, you need to have a lot of people, which is why I can take 3 weeks off in the woods. And
yeah, exactly. Well,
they do all the work.
And come back with 81 new ideas for your staff. Listen, looking ahead, because your career would indicate this. There's always something next for you. I mean, you're stand to be successful. There's always a new challenge out there. What do you see the next chapter being for you?
Well, I can see, you alluded to it earlier, I can see there's going to be more manufacturing in Canada. So I can see that. And so we bought a couple of companies like Valcom Manufacturing and Arctic, so I could see more of that. I was fortunate because I sold my computer business when I was too young. And I was retired, and I found I didn't like being retired. So I'm not looking at retiring anytime soon. And the beauty of being an entrepreneur is I don't have to retire. I could take 4 weeks in the woods.
Yeah.
So I could still step back and have people do that. Of course, I want to solve the problems of the world. And I guess the older I get, the more I feel I will spend a little more time solving the problems potentially.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, now I ask all these. This is kind of our rapid fire. I do this with everyone who's brave enough to come on the podcast. So I'm just gonna rip these off because it's always instructive for me. This podcast is about the business story, but it's also about the leader and leadership. And so there's no right or wrong answers here. It's always interesting how people answer these. What would you tell your younger self if you could go back?
Don't be as afraid.
That's good advice. What or who inspires you?
I tend to be inspired by Mother Teresa and Gandhi and those people. They seem very selfless. Of course, now you read things that maybe they weren't as good as that, but
no one's perfect.
Right. So I tend to be inspired by that. I'm also inspired by people like Frank Hasenfratz, the people that build it themselves.
Right. Yeah, and that's incredible. If you weren't in your current career, what would you be doing? So if you said, I'm not doing Danby, what would you be doing?
I would be doing something in charity. So I'd be working with the homeless or doing something in that.
You can almost hope that you've got such a great team at Danby. Maybe you do that because we need help on that front. So, is there a book that you're reading or a podcast besides Behind the Business podcast? But is there a book that you're reading right now?
Yeah, the one I'm reading right now is Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, and it's a marketing book. He's ex-Ogilvy, and I love marketing. I love psychology. So he has very interesting perspective.
Is it most of your reading or podcasts like nonfiction or business books, or do you kind of check out and read John Grisham books as an example?
So most of everything I do is business, except when I'm on my 3-week retreat.
Oh, except for
then I'll read John Grisham, or I read a 1,000-page Ken Follett book.
Yeah,
and so I will allow myself to do that. But when I did that, which was very recently, I said, I probably should do more of that when I'm in real life.
Yeah,
like right now, and I feel I need to be focused more on business, but maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah, well, those and Ken Follett books. I mean, history and the richness of the past are incredible. What is one of your favorite local businesses in the region? You're from Guelph, but in this part of the world.
Well, the simplest one everyone likes to eat. I like Diana's Restaurant, downtown Guelph. It's Indian food, and it's the right price range, and they're good people, and so food is just the easiest thing to say. So I like that.
Okay, and where can listeners go to connect with you or your businesses? Because you're involved in a variety of things. If something strikes their fancy, they want to learn more about Danby or the things that you're doing to help the community. Where can they find you?
Well, LinkedIn is the most obvious. So I'm on LinkedIn, and Danby.com are the companies, but I'm also reasonably Googleable.
Listen, I want to take just a second to say thank you so much for joining us. I know you're busy, so we'll let you get on with the rest of your day. But we appreciate you coming, and we welcome you to our new podcast studio. Being the first one to be brave enough to come here, really do appreciate it, and we'll look forward to having you back in the coming days.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Behind the Business, proudly presented by Gore Mutual, insurance that does good. New episodes drop every Thursday, so be sure to tune in next week. You can also visit greaterkwchamber.com to catch up on past episodes anytime. We'll see you next time as we continue to go Behind the Business.